The City of Charleston Board of Architectural Review gave its final approval for the International African American Museum last night. In this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups, I sit down with the president and CEO of the museum, Michael Moore. So we're sitting in a new home for the International African American Museum. Talk to me about this new location.
Well, it's beautiful having the city as our partner, and one of the benefits of that partnership is that is this space. This was a space that I guess the city acquired, and we have moved in, and we will perhaps be sharing this space with another nonprofit. But at this point, we're in it, and it gives us lots of opportunity to sort of spread our wings a little bit and to grow, and so it's fantastic.
Let's talk about opportunity because, as you know, the Board of Architecture Review actually gave final approval to the design of the new downtown museum. The preliminary approval for the museum was granted back in September. The board recommended some changes for the initial design. Obviously, once it will be built, it will be a $75 million museum right down the street here. When that approval was given last night, where did your mind go to?
Well, it was an important step. I mean, there are a number of important steps in getting to the moment when we open our doors and open the museum. I think, getting approval from the Board of Architectural Review is one of those important steps. There are others. We've got to raise the money. Right. We've got to, break ground. We've got to go through the whole construction process. But, there are a lot of very important things going on with the International African American Museum right now. By virtue of sort of the BIR approval, right. The architecture is solidifying as well. All of the content and the exhibits inside are being sort of finalized. The landscaping, there's going to be planned a really beautiful sort of landscape that is not just pretty, but that is also meaningful, and that is sort of frames the site and the historical importance of that site in a very profound way, and that's all kind of coming together. So, we're in a very, important stage when so many of the very, fundamental aspects of the museum are kind of starting to solidify. So it's great. Last night was, it was great. I mean, the board was very, they were positive. They were giving us lots of praise on the design, and we've got an amazing team. I mean, the team that we've brought together to build this is phenomenal, and so. But we also that team works hard and does their homework. Right. We incorporated comments from past BAR meetings from people in the community. Right. So we're moving to try to create something that's really profound and important for the city, for the state, and for the nation.
You talk about landscape. You actually told Channel 5 this quote: "The museum is raised above 14 feet off the ground, in part to acknowledge and thoughtfully preserve the ground underneath it, which is really sacred ground, a place where the greatest number of enslaved Africans took their footsteps in America." Mm-hmm. Where are you emotionally?
That's a great question. Every time I go to the site, I am, I'm moved by the history of the site. Our family, we believe that my great-great-great-great-grandmother took her first steps in America on our site. And so it's really personal. And when I'm there, I think about just the emotions that must have. I mean, if you are a captive held underneath the deck of a slave ship for 6 weeks or so, and then taken out, and you don't know where you are, you don't know what your fate is. I can only imagine just the terror, really, of that experience. So, on one hand, emotionally, I feel like this project is an opportunity to pay some homage to those ancestors who took their steps there, and so I feel very, I just feel blessed that I have an opportunity to work on something of that kind of importance. I feel like we're creating also something for the city, right, and something for the state and for the nation. I've grown up knowing about my history, and knowing about Robert Smalls, and that has made an enormous impact on me as a young person and up to this day. But I think there are other stories out there that we just need to get out. We need to tell. We need to extend to people. And so I think other young people, young African Americans, need to have heroes, and the stories are there. We just need to tell them. So I feel like it's a long process, but we're knocking over each of the major dominoes to get there. This last night was one of those steps. There are others that are in front of us, and so we're focused on those, and we're focused on raising the rest of the money and getting this thing built.
Speaking of which, the $19 million is actually needed, according to you, because from private donations in order to break ground. Talk to me more about that step.
Well, backing up, we've had the opportunity, former Mayor Riley who is really, has driven this process from day one, continues to work hard on this to try to raise the money. He was in Columbia yesterday working with the legislature to try to, solidify the funds there. And, he and I have been meeting, constantly with folks trying to sell the vision of what we're doing, and it's important. So we've raised almost 2/3 of the money from public funds from the city, the county, and the state, and the last 25 million or so has been based upon private fundraising, and we've raised 5 or 6 million of that to date, and we've got lots of really high quality asks out there, and we're very optimistic that will yield lots of great investment for us. But we continue to work, we continue to talk to new folks. I've got a meeting in an hour with someone else that we're hoping to talk to about this. And so it's a process, and we believe we're working on something that's really unique. The fact that it's on the site that's so important, where almost half of the Africans who came to the United States took their first steps in the continental United States. I think that's important, and we think that the vision for what we're doing is unique. Our Center for Family History is going to be very powerful. It's going to allow people to come and to identify their own personal strand of this broader story that we're telling. So I think we're creating something that's going to be impactful, that's going to touch people's lives in a variety of different ways. And then beyond that, it's also for the state of South Carolina. It's going to bring tourists here. It's the tourists who are coming here are going to stay longer to participate in what we're doing. And we think there's going to be a significant economic impact to the city, the state as well. So we're excited.
You talk about that $19 million that you guys have already raised. What does that tell you about the community in your mind?
Well, I mean, the mayor and I haven't had a bad meeting yet. I mean, people will give varying degrees based on their ability and based upon how this fits in with their philanthropic sort of agenda. But I think, when we talk about the story, when we talk about the history of the site, when we talk about the vision for the museum and all that that will entail, people resonate with that because it's American history. I mean, yes, it is African American history. It's the history of the people who came here and changed from Africa, but that's a part of our broader American history. And so, when we talk about the trials and tribulations of the people who came here and the obstacles that they faced, but also the way that they were able to achieve in spite of those obstacles, I think that's a story that all Americans can resonate with. And so, people hear it, they get it. We had a meeting with one donor who ended up being a very strong supporter of ours, who, when we talked about the notion that our site it's not the same as Ellis Island for a lot of obvious reasons. Despite what some folks in the national media say about Africans being immigrants and coming here looking for a better life, that wasn't the case. But the fact remains is that our site where we're building this museum is a place where people can come to pay homage to their ancestors in a similar way that people use Ellis Island. And when he heard that analogy, he got it. His ancestors came through Ellis Island, and that really sparked his support. So I think it's a rich story. It's one that is broad. It's not just limited to African Americans in terms of our impact, and I think people are excited to support that.
You talk about stories. Okay, I can fast forward to 2019 when this particular museum is open. how would you write that headline right now?
Well, you know, for me, and I'd probably have to think about that, but for me, what would come to mind is the fact that, Mayor Riley, first introduced this idea, I believe, in the year 2000 in the State of the City address.
Right.
And so that long quest of kind of creating the political case for that locally and then broadening the argument, creating a board that is a national board and that is really helping to build the fundraising, going out and raising all the money, whether it's locally from the city or the county, from the state, but then going out and raising all the dollars, privately. I think it will be a great celebration. It will be a celebration for those who have worked on it that it's done, but I think it will also be a celebration, nationally again, because this is a real resource that will impact certainly Charleston, certainly South Carolina, but the nation. I believe in the same way that the National Museum of African American History and Culture in New York opened to great fanfare and has great attendance, people standing in line at 3 o'clock in the morning trying to get walk-up passage for that day. I think we're going to have a similar kind of reception here because of because of the power of what we're doing, because of the power of the place of where it is. We're hoping to have, and we're feeling really optimistic about bringing back some artifacts from West Africa that perhaps could be something that current day African Americans, their ancestors, could have touched or interacted with generations and generations and generations ago. I think because of these things, because of the Center for Family History, where people will be able to discover their own personal history, I think people will be excited and they will engage with this site, with this museum. We're also hoping to create an institute around social justice that will have a more contemporary looking kind of a role in trying to sort of foster conversation around moving issues of social justice forward. I think that's going to be exciting. So it's going to be dynamic, it's going to be exciting, I will be elated. I know certainly Mayor Riley will be.
Yes, indeed. I gotta go back to that first question because I told you about the new location here. It's actually right across the street from Love Emmanuel.
Yeah.
When you think of that, how do you play that in your mind?
Yeah, it's it's deep. Every time I walk up the stairs, I look out the window, and it's right there. And I walk here, and I see visitors coming and taking pictures. It's Charleston is a living museum. There's so much history here. It's almost wherever you go, if you know your history well enough, something happened kind of in eyeshot. And so the fact that we're right across from Mother Emanuel, and understanding the history, it's history going back to Denmark Vesey, the fact that the church was burned down and all that. I mean, I think it's profound. It underscores for me the history of Charleston, and then being a couple blocks from Marion Square as well. And Charleston is an amazing place. I grew up in Boston where there's a lot of history as well.
Right.
And Charleston in some ways reminds me of that with the cobblestones and the colonial history. But Charleston is such also a charming place. And so it's a profound kind of collection of all these different aspects that makes it a very special kind of place.
Oh, I agree with that.
Yeah,
I agree. Well, Michael Moore, thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate this.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure.
Likewise.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.